Close your eyes. Now, imagine the first time a machine left the ground, not a bird, not a balloon, but something built by human hands. It's small, made of wood, paper, and a rubber band. It spins in the air, rises for a moment, then falls gently back to earth. To most people, it's just a toy. But for two young boys in Dayton, Ohio, it's the beginning of a dream. Wilbur and Orville Wright watched that little toy helicopter fly through their living room. In Wilbur's mind, it never stopped flying. That tiny toy planted a seed. What if people could fly too? The dream grew quietly inside them. Wilbur was the older brother, quiet, serious, and thoughtful. Orville was the younger one, lively, creative, always smiling. They were best friends. Always together. Their house was full of books. Their father, a preacher, encouraged reading and questioning. Their mother, unusually skilled for her time, could fix machines and build tools with her hands. Wilbur and Orville grew up watching her work. They learned that building things wasn't just for adults or rich people, it was for anyone who had ideas. At school, both boys were smart, but neither finished college. Wilbur's plans for Yale were destroyed after a terrible accident. He was hit in the face with a hockey stick. He lost his teeth, his confidence, and spent years at home. But during those quiet years, he read everything. He studied birds. He watched how their wings moved in the air. And slowly, the idea of flight came back. Orville, meanwhile, started a printing business. Then the brothers opened a bicycle shop. They fixed bikes, built bikes, and designed new ones. To others, it was just a job. To them, it was training. Bicycles taught us balance, control, and mechanics, Orville once said. All the things that would one day help us build a plane. At the end of the 1800s, people laughed at the idea of flying. Newspapers called it a fantasy. Scientists said it was against nature. Some inventors tried and failed, others died trying. But Wilbur and Orville didn't let the noise stop them. They weren't trying to be famous. They were just curious. Could they build a machine that flies? They read every study about lift, drag, and wing shapes. They learned from a German inventor, Otto Lilienthal, who died while gliding. They discovered that most existing flight data was wrong. So they decided to run their own tests. And that's when they did something no one expected from bike guys. They built a wind tunnel. In their tiny shop, they created a box that blew air past model wings. They tested more than 200 different wing shapes, keeping detailed notes. They also began building gliders and testing them in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, a place with strong winds and soft sand. The first glider failed. The second was better, but still unstable. The third worked, and flew with a person inside. But they weren't done. They didn't just want to glide. They wanted a machine that could take off, with a motor. Back home in Dayton, they started designing something new. They called it the Flyer, a powered aircraft with wings, propellers, and a light engine. But there were more problems. No one made airplane engines. So they built one themselves. They didn't know how to build propellers either. So they invented a new kind, twisting like a screw, based on math and testing. Every step, they failed. Every failure, they learned. People in town thought they were wasting time. But the brothers kept going, quietly, patiently. At night, Wilbur wrote letters to scientists and read thick books by lamplight. By day, Orville tested wires and gears, his fingers always stained with oil. It wasn't just hard work, it was love. They loved the process. They loved solving puzzles. They believed that flight wasn't magic, it was possible, if you could understand the laws of nature. And they were getting closer. One step at a time. By late 1903, after years of building, testing, crashing, and rebuilding, the Wright brothers had something real. A motor-powered flying machine, made of wood, cloth, wire, and hope. December 17, 1903, Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. The wind was sharp. The sand cold and hard. But Wilbur and Orville were ready. Their machine, the Wright Flyer, stood on a small rail. It looked fragile, with canvas wings and a homemade engine. To most people, it looked ridiculous. Like a bicycle with wings. To the Wright brothers, it was a miracle. They tossed a coin. Orville won. He lay flat on the flyer, hands on the controls. Wilbur stood nearby, ready to guide the first few feet. The engine roared. The propellers spun. The machine jolted forward on the rail, then slowly lifted into the air. 12 seconds. 120 feet. 4 feet off the ground. It was a short flight. But it was everything. For the first time in human history, a powered machine had taken off under its own force, with a pilot, and landed safely. 3 more flights followed that day. The longest lasted 59 seconds. The last one ended in a crash. But it didn't matter. They had done it. They didn't jump or cheer. Just smiled quietly. They had changed the world, with no crowd, no medals, no applause. You might think newspapers would celebrate them. That the world would be amazed. It wasn't. The press ignored their letters. Scientists mocked their claims. One magazine said, "Man will fly, but not in our lifetime." Even the U.S. government turned them away when they offered their flying machine for military use. But the Wright brothers didn't argue. They went back to work. From 1904 to 1905, in a field near Dayton, they kept flying. They flew longer, farther, and higher, without telling the world. Each flight was a new lesson. Each improvement was quiet and careful. By 1908, they could stay in the air for over an hour, turn in circles, and carry a passenger. Finally, the world began to take notice. They demonstrated their plane in France and Washington, D.C. Crowds gasped. Kings and scientists stood in awe. The brothers, once ignored, were now global heroes. Airplanes began to change everything. They delivered mail. They saved lives in war. They made the world feel smaller and closer. By 1910, people no longer asked, "Can we fly?" They asked, "How far can we go?" But Wilbur and Orville stayed humble. They didn't build companies just for profit. They stayed focused on learning, improving, and sharing their ideas with others. Sadly, Wilbur died young, in 1912, at only 45, from typhoid fever. Orville continued the work, flying and speaking for years after. But the bond between them had built something bigger than flight. It had built a legacy. One of belief. One of effort. One of proving that ordinary people can do extraordinary things, if they never stop trying. The story of the Wright brothers is not just about airplanes. It's about persistence. Curiosity. Courage in silence. They didn't shout. They didn't brag. They didn't wait for the world to believe in them. They believed in themselves, and in each other. They remind us. You don't need money to start. Just a question. You don't need everyone's support. Just a deep belief. You don't need to succeed on the first try. Just never stop trying. The Wright brothers taught us that flight is not a fantasy, it's a formula. A formula of vision, effort, failure, and faith. You don't need wings to fly, you need purpose. So whatever your dream is, build it. Test it. Break it. Rebuild it. And when people say, it won't work, think of two bicycle mechanics on a beach. They prove that with heart and hard work, even the sky is not the limit. Because just like the Wright brothers, you can rise. You can fly. Your dream can take off too.